Our next presenter is Debbie Baker. Now, Debbie is a dialogue and certified Mandela art facilitator and is the founder of Creative Consciousness Rising. She is committed to supporting a paradigm of reflective awareness of ourselves, each other, and the world, one human connection at a time. Think about that, one connection at a time. That's what we've been doing all day long. Please put your hands together and let's welcome Debbie Baker to Sacramento Soul Talk. Debbie Baker!
So when I found out about the theme for this Soul Talk, Mission Accomplished, I had to do some real thinking about that. And I think what I've ended up with is a big picture mission that I'm very involved in right now, and I'd like to think all of us are probably tapping into it. And then also some nuts and bolts of mission accomplished that I've been experiencing myself lately. And so that big picture mission, I feel so deep in my heart, and this really came to me since I just got here today. It wasn't in my little notes or my script. But that's that we're in a very challenging place in our world and in our country and in our communities and in our families. And there's so much friction and tension, and I've been hearing a lot of stuff about the eclipse and how that's contributing to all this scratchy energy. And what's come to me is that there's one key mission for those of us who know ourselves to be light workers, and I believe everybody in this room to be a light worker. And that is to hold the light for whatever is around the corner, for whatever the Creator and the universe and this amazing kaleidoscope we call our world and life has in store for us. So I've really been thinking a lot about that. And when I talk about the nuts and bolts of my mission accomplished, what I realize is that at the core of everything I've been through lately is that one thing, and that is to hold the light. So I invite you to do the same. So when I thought about mission accomplished, I've heard other people say, I had to think, what does that mean? What does it mean to me? And I know in my life, most of my accomplishment of missions has been questioned internally by why couldn't I do it better? Why didn't I show up more? Why couldn't I fix things? Why couldn't I smooth things out? So I've never really given thought to what kind of missions I've accomplished. And when I sat with it, when I first heard about it, I realized that I was kind of working through a life mission. It was a very exciting time for me. I could feel myself in this place of birthing everything that I had dreamed about for so long and walking into this space of carrying it forward with comfort, with authenticity, with joy. And on June 10th, my husband had a heart attack. And so I was right in the grips of all this birth, and my life radically shifted at every level. And in the reflection since then, I've kind of come to realize that my life has been a series of those kind of radical shifts. It's my path, it's my dharma, whatever you want to call it. And this one pulled the rug right out from under me. And it was crazy because this guy had no indication of heart disease, still doesn't, except that he has a damaged heart since he had his heart attack. He had no high blood pressure. He had no high cholesterol. He had no signs of vascular constriction, except that he had 100% block in his his arterial descending artery. It's the one that goes over the outside of the heart. And his body had worked really hard to build a system to avoid the heart attack. His body had created its own bypass. But once the block hit 100%, the whole system collapsed. And so it was time for me to become a caregiver, to tap into providing communication to family and friends, to work with physicians, to let everything else I had going go, to put it on the back burner. And it was a huge challenge. It was a huge challenge, not to mention my fear for him, but he dodged the bullet. He didn't end up having to have open heart surgery. They were able to insert a stent. And he was told he's kind of a medical anomaly because he outlived the widowmaker. That's what that artery is called. So I was thinking about that and thinking, I've been living a whole series of missions accomplished lately. And that very first mission was, helping to ensure that he had the well-being and the environment he needed to get well, and to rejoice and celebrate the fact that he was still with me. So, boom, there's a mission for you. Well, I'd like to say that things went smooth and that I stayed inspired from that vein. But once I found out that this guy was going to survive and all was well in that arena, I still had a lot on my plate. And one of the biggest things was that I had to go back to work for him. Not my favorite kind of work. Been there, did that for 30 years, then did it part-time for him after I retired, and I really realized I didn't enjoy it because it's all administrative, it's all, task-oriented. I'm just so over that at this point in my life. And yet there was a part of me that knew that that was exactly where I needed to be. And that was the part that I listened to. And so I had to reconfigure a lot of my calendar. I had to deal with a lot of frustration. I had to be very present to what was. And yet, even with all the frustration, I had this sense of peace, that everything was in correct order, that things were happening on a divine continuum, and that these missions were all part of that continuum. So if I could just wake up every day and show up and stay present and do the things I needed to do and tend to my family and their concerns and tend to taking care of myself, then that was an accomplishment. And I did. I was able to make time to take dog walks, to reflect occasionally. I couldn't do it every day, but it was just a really compacted time, and I was still able to take care of myself. That's a mission, and I accomplished it. It was a huge wake-up call, though. One of the things I experienced was, this overwhelming awareness that I wasn't ready to not have him in my life anymore. And after 35 years of being together, there have been times when I've asked myself that question, because it's not always been easy, and those who know us know that we are 100% opposite people. My sister-in-law actually made the comment one time after being with us that we actually speak different languages. She doesn't even know how we've stayed married. But I wasn't ready for the alternative, and I was so grateful that he was alive, and yet I was grieving. I couldn't figure that out. Where did that come from? And so I had to really do some deep internal work to kind of get to the bottom of that. I was grieving what could have been, but I was also grieving everything that I had to put on that back burner that I couldn't attend to right now because it just wasn't time. It wasn't time. All my excitement, everything had to go on the back burner. And the grief came from that little piece of me that was afraid it would all go away. So I was living into that and accomplishing the mission of staying present, even to my own fears, even to the things that were troubling to me. And that's not to say I did it well, and it's not to say it was easy, but just staying present, that was huge for me. And then, less than 2 weeks after the heart attack, I found a lump on my breast. And it chokes me up to think about it. It gives me chills because here I was in the middle of all this change, all this transition in my family, having to work at a job I didn't like, trying to deal with all these things I'd had in play before the heart attack, trying to stay present, and then boom. And I was like, what the heck? What is this and why now? And I made a decision to keep that to myself. And I still questioned the wisdom of that, and yet I knew that if I gave voice to it, it would open a space for fear. And I couldn't afford to go there. I couldn't do it. There was too much happening around me. I didn't wait. I did my work. I made my appointment. I couldn't be seen for 2 weeks. And so I knew that I had to figure out a way to live with this secret for 2 weeks. And 2 weeks feels like an eternity when you don't know what's going to happen. And so I had to go inside to a very, very deep place to do some real soul searching about what does this mean? And I had to uncover layers and layers of fear and possibility and everything you read about and everything you hear about and people I know who have struggled through this journey. And all of that wanted to keep me in fear. And yet, when I got to the core, I knew I was going to be okay. I could hear that. I could feel that. And it wasn't necessarily just a carte blanche, everything's okay. It was an okay like, if it's something, you'll be okay. If it's nothing, you'll be even better. And that's what I had to live into. And time goes on. And my husband has made a remarkable recovery. He went back to work in less than 3 weeks. He's actually gone this weekend, less than 2 months after his heart attack, for his first camping trip at our Claims Camp, which is a very rugged place to move around in. And he's with a big strapping man who can get him out of there if anything happens, but I know nothing's going to happen. He's healthy, he's recovered. I went through the process. I went through a very scary time of keeping a lot to myself and the fear of the unknown, and also living into this knowledge that everything would be okay. And I learned that the lump on my breast was a cyst. And I'm so grateful, but I've also undergone the mission of understanding a deep empathy and compassion for those of us who take that walk. And the news isn't always as positive as what I experienced. And when I think about it, I keep coming back to this place of, yeah, but when I got to my core, not knowing what was going to happen, I still knew I'd be okay. I knew I would be surrounded and held and protected in whatever happened. And that is exactly what I've been able to live. And so I consider that also to be a mission accomplished, to be in a place where I could surrender completely to what was. I didn't have to like it. And I do have to say that that act of surrender has never been easy for me. But this time, there was so much gentle spirit and a peace that goes beyond understanding, that lived within me, that was able to carry me through that complete surrender. So there's a part of me now that is understanding that it's all by design. It's all this continuum of missions that we get to go through so that we can enter into this sacred act of becoming who we are. At first, it was hard to stay with the daily grind, and I've realized that the biggest issue there is that if my vibration's not up, then things don't work as well. So I started using whatever tools I could to raise my vibration. Meditation, prayer, I do that anyway, but I needed help. I needed like my singing bowl. I needed to do toning and yelling and singing, whatever it took to keep that vibration going so that I could get through that, get through all the things that were happening. And it worked. So in closing, I'd like to say that the big mission, I feel, has been accomplished for me in exercising these nuts and bolts of daily life is that I have been able to work in clarity and regain and reclaim my sense of faith and trust and awareness that everything's going to be okay, and inspiration and the energy to be present to whatever comes next. And besides, it's all in its divine perfection. It's all unraveling and unrolling and presenting as it should. So I celebrate that. And I just want to mention a couple of things that I'd love to have you all join me in this celebration of life. And one of the things that I've had to weave in through this time is my contribution to an anthology, a book called From Warrior Women to Angel Wings. I have copies of that here. There's 47 women authors that contributed to this book. And I've launched my website, so come pick up a card so you can see what's coming up next. And I've also been planning for a retreat that I would like you to invite a flyer when you come back. So in closing, I'd like to ask if you would close your eyes for a moment and take a deep breath. And just ask yourself, what mission have I accomplished lately? And if you feel moved to do so, you can name that in a word or two. And share it with the rest of us. I see a hand in the back.
My mission is showing up.
My mission is showing up. Thank you. And thank you for showing up. So just carry that in your heart. And give yourself a great big hug for whatever it is you've had to walk through and accomplish lately, because it's all just on this grand continuum called life. Thank you.